Hey, welcome to this week's edition of the Martial Arts Mastery Podcast. I am your host, Grandmaster Jonathan Field. We have a special guest on with us today, Master Telena Mulligan, a fourth-degree black belt in Taekwondo, second-degree black belt in the Superfoot system, multiple-time world champion and multiple-time ranking champion, which I'm sure we'll get into that. But welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yeah, so I'm just not gonna go on Instagram here. Oh well. Anyway, so let's start right from like with all my guests. We always start right from the beginning of your martial arts journey. We'll kind of go from there. So tell us how you got started in Taekwondo.
So I got started really early. I must have been in about grade 6 or 7. I don't know the year, so that would have been probably 1989, maybe 1990. I would have been probably 11 or 12 years old, and my parents essentially they were worried about bullying. Why they put me in martial arts. They were worried that there was some bullying going on in the schools, and they wanted me to be able to defend myself if I needed to. And they put me in. There was a gentleman that was first. What they put me in is there was a gentleman that was having martial arts classes in his basement, and they put my sister and I into that. It was kind of a really informal part-time thing for this person. And I was in it was Taekwondo as well. And I was in that for a few months before they got introduced to Cobourg Taekwondo. And they enrolled my sister and I in Cobourg Taekwondo back in, the late 1980s, early 1990s. And we started there. So basically, as a child, I started Taekwondo.
Yeah, so for anybody that's listening, that's basically the same Taekwondo school that I started with. So you and I are at the same Taekwondo school. So I had Master Abby on last week, and we were discussing. Well, I was discussing how it seemed like when I showed up, everybody left. And then years, a lot of years later, everybody came back. So which is kind of cool. But so tell me a little bit about your journey. So before I came, so your journey from white belt to black belt. Tell me some of the experience with training, maybe some of the tournament that you guys went through, some of the training that you and your sister did together.
Yeah. So we were basically my sister and I were kind of a joint package deal. We attended pretty much all our classes together, and we it was back when I started Cobourg Taekwondo was actually it had a class in a school, an old school that's now been turned into condos, but it was like a typical school gymnasium where we did Taekwondo, the hard, wooden gymnasium floors. And we used to, there were double classes then as well. So we would go a couple times a week, and we would do two adult classes. Essentially, we didn't really go to the kids class as much. I can't even remember now if there were kids classes back then. The club seemed quite small. And we would go for a couple classes, and I really enjoyed sparring even back then. Whereas my sister liked the patterns side of things, but we would try to break up our classes so that we were well rounded in terms of what we experienced. There was a long period of time because I essentially did Taekwondo throughout middle school and high school. There was a long period of time, and the club went through different studios where it was located, and also people came and went because we were there a long time. It went to a gym at one point where we were the upstairs of a gym, and we would train there, and then eventually the club got a little bit bigger and got its own studio up on Darcy Street in Cobourg, and which was really nice because it was a big place that had a couple different gyms. And we consistently went. My journey wasn't dictated by a desire to test quickly. We had other responsibilities. We had school was really important to us. So we didn't rush testing. It took me a long time to get to black belts, and we were fine with that. We would only test every so often. And we did attend tournaments, which I always really liked. One that stands out in my mind was we went to Maple Leaf Gardens, and there was a big tournament there. I can't recall what it was called, but I must have been probably in mid-high school. And I didn't win, but I think I placed. I might have come in third or fourth, something like that. But it was really neat to watch the adult black belts sparring, because it was such a big tournament, and there was a really high level of skill there. And it just confirmed for me that with martial arts, my favorite part of martial arts is the competitive side, in terms of probably sparring is my favorite, with a close second to breaking. So at the time, I wasn't familiar with breaking. It wasn't a big thing in Cobourg Taekwondo. In that era of Cobourg Taekwondo, there was a little bit of breaking, but essentially you broke a board or two for your test. But it wasn't competitive in terms of going to breaking tournaments and, traveling internationally like it is now. So I'm really happy that I've added that kind of to the subject areas where I compete, as well as sparring. But I still, my first love is sparring. So that essentially, I did. I was part of the club until I went away into university, and then I kind of fell off when I went to university in terms of my training. It was just I went to a different place, and I wasn't in my home club, and I wasn't consistently a practitioner of martial arts while I was at university. So that's kind of my history with Cobourg Taekwondo before I came back. When you were the master of the club.
Yeah, so like I think it's typical. A lot of people, they go once they kind of graduate high school and they go off to college or university. They do one two things. They either kind of take a break from martial arts to focus on their education, or some of them are closer. They still continue to come to the dojo here, and we have some current students that are in university and college that are still doing classes. But in your case, you and your future husband were further away, so you actually did study at a few other martial arts places. Can you kind of maybe talk a little bit about your experiences in training in some of the other schools that you went to?
Yeah, so for a while I went to Queen's University for my post-secondary degree, and for a while I did join the club there. They had a Queen's University Taekwondo club. I never really felt very comfortable there. There was a lot of individuals that were. It was very male at that time. The club was very male, and a lot of the people, the members of the club, were Koreans, and they weren't super welcoming to. I felt to a Canadian female, and to be blunt about it. I just didn't feel really welcomed there, and I wish it's one of my biggest regrets that I didn't persevere and stay in the club, despite my uncomfortableness there. I wish I had of, because it kind of set the stage for me, not for that period of time when I was in university, not really practicing martial arts the way I had been, and I really did miss it. When I graduated university, I moved around quite a bit. I was in the West End of Toronto. I was up in Oakville for a while. I was working in Brampton. Then I moved to Oshawa, and I tried a few different clubs. I mostly what I did actually was kickboxing, because I just felt the particular places where I were never seemed to have a Taekwondo club close. So I did do a fair bit of kickboxing. One of the clubs I went to actually in Toronto was Twin Dragons, and I enjoyed it there. They were a kickboxing club, and it was a good, at the time I was working a lot, and they had late hours, and it was kind of convenient and easy to go to. And I didn't have to do a lot of like practice on my own. I was short for time because most of my time was spent working. And it was basically, I would just go and I would, learn to kickbox and kickbox for the space that I was there. So I did that for a while. I moved to Durham, and they actually had a club in Durham for a while. So I was there for a while kickboxing too. And the years kind of went by, and I was not in Taekwondo per se. And eventually I moved back to Cobourg. With my husband, we had children then. And I ended up enrolling my children in Taekwondo is how I kind of came to be reconnected with Taekwondo specifically. My children got to be, they were quite young, actually. My oldest, I don't know, when I put him into, I guess it wasn't Little Dragons I put him into, but he might have been maybe 4 or 5. When my oldest boy, I enrolled him first. And at that time, Master Jonathan, it was Cobourg Taekwondo as you have it, your club. And so it had been a while since I'd been in Taekwondo, so I didn't enroll myself at first. But I felt, as my children were doing Taekwondo, I was sitting on the sidelines watching them doing Taekwondo, wishing I was actually part of the class, really missing it. So that eventually led to me deciding to enroll myself. And in terms of what year that was, I'm thinking it must have been 2014, 2015, if I have my years right. But that kind of was the impetus for me coming back to actively training in Taekwondo.
Now, compared to when you were training way back when to now, what the academy, or even what the academy was like when you first came back, what were like some of the primary differences that you noticed between, I guess I'm going to say, the original Cobourg Taekwondo under our original master versus the changes I implemented around that time?
Yeah, so the club, first of all, it was in a different location. Like it was in the Spring Street location. Like it was clear to me when I came in that, Taekwondo was your career, right? It wasn't just some of the clubs that I've been to, over my period of being in martial arts, it was clear that, it was a part-time thing for some of the instructors, but it was clear right away coming into your club that was your career, that, that was your business, and that was the primary thing that you did. I was really impressed with the structure of the club. I was really impressed with how many classes that you offered. Like it wasn't just, a couple classes at night and you had to be, maybe, and not even every night. It was, there was classes in the morning, there was classes basically after work, there was classes in the evening, and it was just very accessible, very well run and organized. And I was really impressed with like the level of Taekwondo going on in the club. And, when I joined, one of the things that had kept me from getting really involved in martial arts, when I was involved in my career, was lack of time. And I found that the fact that there was morning options available and evening options available to come to class really made it so that I, felt that I could join and actually make the classes enough to be participating in the way I wanted to. At the time I joined, I had really young children, and, an evening class wasn't an option for me because I wouldn't have anyone to take care of them in the evening. Whereas during the day, a morning class was possible for me because they'd be at school or at their nursery school or whatever, and I could actually, free myself up to go to class at 10 o'clock, which I think that was one of the biggest factors in me rejoining Taekwondo, because for you, it was a full-time thing, and there was like options for me to actually attend and meaningfully participate in the club. I also really liked the mats and I super like the mats now, but I was used to practicing Taekwondo on a hard tile floor or hardwood floor. And that was, to be frank, like on my knees, like my knees are still kind of shot, because for years and years, bouncing up and down when you're sparring, when you're doing patterns, whatever, on that hard floor, had its effect on me physically. But it was really nice that, I guess the facilities that you had really, really impressed me, with a mat on the floor, that if you fell, you didn't hurt yourself. You weren't having that issue with your joints. And I think the biggest thing too, that I found like very impressive when I came back to see your club, was your specific expertise. Like, you were a very high black belt. I think when I came, I don't know, I can't remember if you were 5th or if you were 6th, but like that's significant to be taught personally by a black belt of that rank, because, going through martial arts, a lot of times in other clubs, your instructor would be maybe a 1st degree black belt, or maybe just a black belt, and the supervising owner of whatever club wouldn't be there for the classes. Like they would be somewhere else. You never get that one-on-one tutelage with somebody who was a master or a grandmaster. Whereas with your club, I found that, you have a lot of expertise, and your students really benefit from that. So those are just some differences that I saw, between a club that was, a fledgling club, so to speak, which is kind of what I think of it a little bit, when I was in Taekwondo growing up, and a club was mature and very, very good facility, very, very a mature business, basically a mature martial arts club. Anyway, yeah. So I was impressed when I came back, and
Like that, I've traveled to quite a few different schools across North America and the States, and even England, Ireland. But yeah, no, I think you go back to like the 80s, 90s, compared to what a lot of martial arts schools are now. Like, I spent for 7 years on that tile floor, and yeah, like me did not like that, so we transitioned over to the Taekwondo style mat, and then during the COVID pandemic, we switched over to the tatami style judo mat, which is a lot nicer on your joint. And when you take down and training, it's just so much nicer. But I think people take it for granted that back in the old days that, yeah, you were on a hard floor or cement floor, or when I first hooked up with Grandmaster or on the Santo, it was just a carpet floor. So like, or we've seen like even in different levels of matting where you spent like the cheap mats versus the more expensive one, the quality difference, and then the training difference is fixed. But yeah, no, and then there's also that difference between somebody that does work part time versus somebody that does it full time. There's definitely a difference in the quality. I'm not saying one is necessarily better than one or the other, just everybody does their own thing. But yeah, to be able to go to a school where the instructor or the owner of the school is a full time instructor that's, you know, training, every day as well, and always upgrading their skill and trying to progress the school and make their students better. Like, versus somebody that does it once or twice a week out of a rec center or something. I mean, again, there's nothing wrong with that. Just, you're gonna get what you want out of it, right?
Mhm. Yeah, and there's a different feel to it for sure. Like I've been to all sorts, and like, I mean, if you're not going to take a deep dive into martial arts and you just want an activity for, after work once or twice a week, then the rec center model is fine. That's fine, right? It serves you get out of it what you want it to get out of it. But if you want to train with the hope of, taking, competing internationally and, hopefully getting international titles, then it's really important to have a master that's what they do. They're all in, right? And like anything, it's what you want out from it, right? So yeah, no.
Well, everybody's martial arts journey is completely different. Some people are just there for recreational and have fun, fitness, may learn some self defense. Some people they might start that way, then they move on to martial art more from a competitive standpoint where they want to compete, whether it's sparring, weapons, competitive breaking, whatever that might be. And then you have people that martial arts becomes more of a lifestyle for them. They want to understand the culture and really to do a deep dive into it and learning other styles as well, and kind of finding what different martial art styles kind of blend good for them, right? Like we have Taekwondo here, we have the Superfoot system as well. We incorporate weapons, a little bit of ground fighting. We're gonna be at some point here we're gonna be adding Hapkido as well. So yeah, we're always progressing. So now, so you came back as a first degree black belt, if I'm correct, and you did.
No, actually, I wasn't first degree. That's another one of my biggest regrets. I didn't, before I went to university, I didn't test for my first Dan. I got my black belt, and it was back then, it was the same test, except you had one further pattern. You just had to do choreo, but it was the same test pretty much for first degree as it was for black belt. And I just didn't do it. I went away to university and didn't get it. And I found that not getting that first degree black belt, other schools would refer to it as, oh, you're a club black belt, you're a club black belt. And I hadn't realized when I left the significance of that stripe. And that was a big regret of mine, because I could have tested within, like, I didn't even have to wait time. I could have almost tested immediately back then to get my first, and I didn't do it. So I came back as just a black belt, club black belt.
So for people that really don't understand like the felt ranks or even Taekwondo style, so if you get just a black belt, it's called Shodan Bowl, which is just a black belt. Some people call it an apprentice black belt. Some people call it a probationary black belt, whatever you want to call it. And then you have your first, second, third, fourth, fifth, etc. degrees. And then there's also Quan, which those degrees are like the old school way where your instructor just gave you your whatever degree it was, and that was it. And then nowadays, at least since like 60s or 70s, you have all the big organizations like the Cookie Wad, the ITF, and all the other styles have their world organization, and then they have certifications on top of that, where you have like behind me, I got Cookie Wad and Ludic Wad, and to my right, I have ABCTF, so the different federation black belt besides your quad. And again, that's the thing where everybody's journey is a little bit different. Some people are just happy with having a quad from their school, and some people want like the Fuji one if you're World Taekwondo, or maybe they want Ludic Quad, or maybe they want APCTF. Like here, we offer, the Fuji one, your quad, we are automatically incorporating the APCTF certificate with our quad, so you're instantly getting international recognition. And then if you want, like I said, Fuji one, or if you want Ludic Quad, we have those options as well. And then, again, some people want certain certification, and if people don't, me being a school owner, I kind of like to have the more the better, because every organization kind of has their own requirements a little bit, so it kind of forces you to, learn more and, progress again in your martial arts. But so King Cap is a total on both, and obviously you progress first, second, third, fourth, which fourth degree, for people that don't know, is a master's level Taekwondo. Kind of drives me nuts when people get just their Shodan bowl or just their black belt and they quit. It's just like, you just started. Like, really, like, you barely started. Black belt in Taekwondo is like you just are just starting to understand the fundamentals, quite frankly. And then coming into master's level, your master's the fundamentals and fifth degree and up. Nothing you're coming to learn even beyond that. But so so you went through so you're used to the old style of testing with our original master, and you come back and go through testing with me, which is a
Yes.
little bit different. Kind of,
Yes.
you can kind of maybe go into detail a little bit, like how was your black belt test with our original master versus first degree black belt with me?
Yeah, it was a lot different. It was, I don't know, maybe the test was, I can't remember how long it was, but it was essentially as long as it took to go through my different requirements, like, the hanbans, the patterns, a little bit of sparring. The test might have been an hour and a half, 2 hours, if it was even that. I can't remember. It was very similar. It was very similar to the color belt tests. It was just there was a little more material. And then when I came back, everybody was talking about, because when I came back, I had missed. I didn't come back at the right time of the year to be able to test right away. I came back partway through the testing cycle. I think I came back. I think I came in January or something like that. So I didn't come back and get right into a black belt testing cycle. I was there for probably another half year before I entered into the testing cycle. So I was hearing all these stories about, what the black belt test was and how long it was, and that it was a whole, 10 hours long. And it was intriguing to me because that was a new concept for me. It was a new concept, like in terms of any club I had been to. I didn't realize some tests were, multiple hours long. So I was intrigued. That there was this test where you basically, it was as much of stamina physical test as it was a test of your knowledge, because any other test I'd ever experienced before had essentially been a test of my knowledge. Did I know my patterns? Did I know my hanbans? Not, was I fit enough and in shape enough to be able to endure 10 hours of intense martial arts while demonstrating that I knew everything that I was supposed to know for that belt level. So it was much different. And at the time, I was very, very fit when I came into Taekwondo. And I figured, this test will be, even though it's 10 hours, it's going to be a breeze for me, because I was just, like in my peak of fitness. But then I guess it must have been a year and a half before I did the test that I'd come back to Taekwondo. And I was happy it was, because it took me that long to refresh my memory about the actual knowledge components, because at that point it had been, several years since I had been practicing Taekwondo specifically. So I had to relearn my patterns. I had to relearn my hanbans. It was actually a massive undertaking for me to even do it in a year and a half. So I thought that was going to be the biggest challenge for me going into the test, like relearning all that technical components that I had, forgotten over the passage of time. But when I got to the test, it was actually very, very physically challenging. Like I was super fit at the time. So needless to say, it was a challenge. It challenged me, and it really did feel like an accomplishment when I was done. And it wasn't just the day, because like every other test I'd ever done, you'd be expected to learn your knowledge requirements and then go into the test and show them. But there was this requirement throughout the 10 months of the testing cycle that I had to have, so many hundreds of patterns done, so many, rounds of sparring done. Like at the time that I first came back, I can't remember how many thousands push-ups and sit-ups and crunches we had to do. But we had to have this journal where we kept track of all the hours that we'd spent doing Taekwondo and all the hours we'd spent doing cardio and how many, hundreds and hundreds of push-ups that we'd done. And it was a shock. It was like a part-time job, to be honest with you, keeping this journal of all the requirements and getting them done in time for the test. It was quite an undertaking. It kept me very busy for sure, between that and working. And at the end of it, I really did feel like I had accomplished something. And I knew my stuff really well too, comparatively to what I had known before, for sure. So it was quite an experience.
When you say now all those requirements, though, at the end of the day, obviously helped you prepare for the actual test itself. It just wasn't like, oh, we're just gonna make you do these requirements because we want you to do them. No, there's a reason for it to lead you up to that point where, okay, yes, it is a 10-hour test. You have to know your material, but you also have to do that material, your curriculum under pressure. Like out in the real world, if somebody attacks you, whatever, whether it takes you a minute to defend yourself, whether it takes 10 minutes, or whatever it is, you got to go until you finish it, right?
Yeah, no, it absolutely prepared me. I mean, not only did I know my requirements the best I'd ever known them in my life, and I mean, I'd done martial arts for, like, I wasn't new to martial arts, right? I'd done martial arts. I'd grown up doing martial arts. Let's put it that way. So it was like, I was learning high school, but I was also learning Taekwondo. So I knew my stuff the best I ever had in my life. And I was in the best physical fitness I was in my life. Like, by the end of that test, the amount of muscle that I had built over the course of that year was just amazing. Like, I really, it really did prepare me for the test. And I, when I say it was challenging, but I knew I could do it. Like, I had prepared properly. So I knew, I was ready for it. It was a good experience. It was a really good experience. And it was a good team building experience too. Like the other people that tested with me, I was pretty new to the club still, right? Some of these people had been training with each other for years. And I felt that I really, by the end of the year, I was really part of the club, and they really, I really belonged, and I felt like I had a place there and I belonged there. It was a good experience for sure.
Now, obviously, you went through first, second, third, fourth dan here during your testing, but now your two older children, Alex and Roland, have both done their black and at least first degree. What's the difference between you going through the process and having your children process?
Do you mean the difference when I was young going through the process, or do you mean the difference between me?
So now you're watching your children, as a parent, you're watching your children go through the process and having to help them deal with it. Sometimes when they don't want to go to class, sometimes when they don't want to train at home, they're struggling with their requirements, whatever. But no, like, you still made them go through their testings, and like, what kind of from the parent viewpoint, what kind of experience that?
You know what? Because my children were young when they got their black belts, it was a lot of work for me too, just because, their maturity level, obviously, I would need to get them to class, and whether they got to class or not was as much on me as it was on them, right? If my schedule was off and I couldn't get them there, that was kind of, it could be on me. And it was a lot of work just making sure that they kept their journals and they did what they needed to do. Because it's a lot of work just going through the 10 months. But they're definitely better prepared, and they know their stuff better than if it was just, say, like a 2-hour test. Like, knowing that they're going to have to go through that 10 hours, and it's going to be abundantly clear if they don't know their stuff, makes them prepare better, right? They're prepared better, and they've just spent more time because they've had to get a certain number of hours of Taekwondo in, a certain number of cardio in, certain number of patterns in, and if you're if you're filling out your journal and doing what you're supposed to do, then you're going to know the stuff by the end, because you have to, you know, repetition dictates knowledge, right? Like if you have to do a pattern for 100 times or 1,000 times, you know, you're going to know it by the end because you've done it so many times. So like it's definitely a family is involved for sure with a child testing. Like it's not just that child testing, because, you know, if you're dealing with somebody who's not a teenager yet, somebody who's, you know, like 10 or 11 or 12 even, you know, they don't have, you need to keep them on track. Not that you're doing it for them, but you just need to make sure that they're on track and they're filling out the journals. And it's definitely a family thing. And lots of times we've tried to, my husband is in the club too, and he's a black belt as well. And we've tried to time the tests sometimes so that they're either two of the children are testing together, or maybe they're testing with a parent. And it just depends what's going on in the parent's life that year, what makes more sense. But I find sometimes testing together can make it easier because you're both doing the same thing at the same time, keeping track of things. And we've done that before. Like my son and my husband tested one year at the same time, and that I found that year it really worked well because, you know, they were both doing the same thing at the same time, and you know, Alexander had someone to go to with class because, you know, my husband was going to class with him, so that worked. But then there's been years too that if, say, I'm testing and I'm preoccupied and I'm really busy, that I might not necessarily have the time to make sure the kids are doing what they're supposed to do too. So it can work both ways. It just depends on the year and what we have going on with our jobs and what the kids have going on with school at the same time. So we have had years where there's been false starts. You know, somebody started on the testing cycle and it just wasn't going because for whatever reason, work was too busy, life busy, you know, we haven't been able to keep up with a testing cycle. And, you know, if the kids aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing, then I'm fine with saying, you know what, this isn't your year to test. You've got too much going on at school. We've got too much going on at work. It's better if you do it another year. So that's happened too, because you have to be dedicated to it and you have to actually do what you're supposed to do. But you know, so that when you test at the end in June, you've earned it.
Exactly, that's the whole point, right? You're gonna end up earning it, and everybody's journey is always slightly different. There's really no nice smooth journey. It's always there's ups and downs, but you just kind of keep your eyes on what you want to achieve, and you get there when you get there. Now, so for people that don't know, there's probably a lot of people that don't know. So you are a lawyer by trade. You are a crown attorney, but you're also a defense lawyer. So you kind of play both sides sometimes, but primarily crown attorney. So how would you say that being a martial artist, how does being a martial artist help you with being a crown attorney? But then on the flip side, how does being a lawyer or a crown attorney help you as a martial artist? Because they must, each side must have different input in there.
Yeah, so I was a crown attorney for 18 years, and then I decided that I was going to switch to defense. So I resigned my position as a crown attorney in well, it was 2 years ago now, and but I still do crown attorney work as a per diem crown attorney, but I also do defense work now too. So my role has changed a little bit. Being a lawyer, you know, that's part of the reason that I wasn't involved with martial arts for a number of years, because it was when I was young in my career, it was just very, very time consuming. You need to have a lot of discipline because it's a lot of hours being a lawyer. So it has been a barrier in throughout in some ways throughout the years, just because I didn't have the flexibility with time, and I didn't have just essentially the time to commit to martial arts that I wanted to commit. but I think that, you know, like anything that you've had to have a lot of discipline with helps you in martial arts. Like if you're able to, and when I, being a crown attorney, you have to be very disciplined because it's a demanding thing, and you've got a lot of constraints on your time and your focus. And I think that helped me in martial arts, because when I got into the club setting, I was able to be very single-minded about, you know, for that hour that I was at martial arts, first of all, I needed that break from practicing criminal law. Emotionally, I needed that break. I needed somewhere to get, because we deal with nasty stuff in criminal law. Sometimes it's terrible. And when there's no outlet for that vicarious trauma, because that's what it can be, it's very hard on you emotionally and psychologically. And I think for a lot of years, I didn't have an outlet when I wasn't practicing martial arts to, you know, to put my career aside, to put my job, my day aside, and go somewhere where it was just very, very physical and very focused on, you know, focused on that pattern, focused on that sparring match, focused on, you know, getting my kicks, you know, as perfect as I could get them. And I found that when I came back to martial arts, that was my outlet to get away from the stuff that my mind needed to get away from work. And it helped me be very single-minded about martial arts. And when I was there, I was very physically present there usually, or I tried to be at least. You know, sometimes you can't, but I tried to be. And I was very focused completely on learning my martial arts and practicing and being the best martial artist that I could be. Vice versa, I think being in martial arts really helped me with my career, because I needed that outlet. I needed, when I didn't have a hobby that I was doing, when I didn't have like an outside interest, my whole world was about my job. And, you know, you need a place, you need to have a place mentally where you can go to get away from that. Otherwise it just becomes too much. And it helped me. I think I achieved much better mental health once I was doing martial arts, which in turn made me a better lawyer, made me, you know, better when I was at my job, because I had that outlet, or I knew, you know, when I got home, I was going to have that outlet of martial arts to kind of decompress and you know, be of a frame of mind that had nothing to do with work. And martial arts is about discipline too, which, you know, the more discipline you can get in your life in any aspect, it helps other areas that you need discipline. So I do think that they mutually complemented each other, and it helped me in my career, and it helped me be a better martial artist too. So yeah, I think I was much better grounded when I came back to martial arts.
So at the end of the day, really, martial art, the discipline aspect of it, really helped with the ability to balance out your life, or the ability to like have more freedom. Martial art or discipline really helps people with the freedom. You know, people think, oh, when you're disciplined, you know, you're very structured, you don't have any freedom. But it's the exact opposite. The more disciplined you can become, the more freedom and more choices you can actually have, and more balance in your life. Versus if you don't have that discipline, you know, and then you're just working all the time. For example, there's no balance, there's no discipline. It's just working. That kind of sucks. Now, moving forward with that, now you are. We have a few more minutes here. So you are a multiple-time world champion and multiple-time champion in martial arts ranking with the Cobourg and the USBA. Can maybe go into a little bit of detail how you got started in competitive ranking here, and then maybe share some stories about maybe about some competitions, or if there's a competition or two that kind of stuck out in your mind, or.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, like I said before, breaking was kind of a new thing when I came back to me, like when I came back to martial arts. It didn't have a big component when I was growing up in our club. Like we would break for a test, but it wasn't, let's go to a breaking tournament. So when I came back and you had your Team Wolverine that, you'd meet every Saturday and there was quite a few members, and it was very popular. When we went to the first tournament in May, that when we were at the club, it was just really neat to watch, like everybody breaking these giant stacks of wood and stacks of concrete. And it was something that I'd never experienced before. And I thought to myself, I want to be part of this. This looks like a lot of fun, and it looks hard, and it looks really cool. And it looks like a skill that I want to try to get good at. And so, I started training, breaking, and it's just so much fun. Like it's so much fun. And then going to these tournaments where you have really world-class competitors that are breaking, some of the men are breaking, on a stomp, 15, 16, 17, 18 boards, and with elbows, they're breaking, the women are too, but the men are breaking more than the women, obviously, just based on their strength. But it looked really neat. And then when I tried it, it's quite hard. It's very hard to do. Like it looks hard, and it is hard. So I started training. My family and I started training with your Team Wolverine, and eventually became part of Team Wolverine. And just going to our tournaments kind of introduced me to, you had people from the States, people from Ireland, people from, all over the place coming to this tournament to break. And then, demonstrations of world records being broken, different. I think the first year I went, I think it was several members of Team Wolverine were trying to break a certain number of boards within a certain time. And it was just really cool to watch.
Team of 4 competitor. It was two male adults, two male junior, 200 board. Basically, we all broke 50 boards each as fast as we could in the fastest time possible. And I think it's been like at least 3 or 4 times, if not maybe more, that other teams have tried to beat that record. Nobody seems to can do it. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. It was just a really fun day, that tournament. I remember that first tournament. My kids did breaking, like they were little then, so what they were breaking was not much, but it was just so neat to watch them, compete with the other kids their age. And my husband was breaking, and he was actually quite good at it. He could break a lot. And then, I was competing with the ladies, who are very impressive. The ladies in the club are very impressive, and they can break a lot. And it was just really cool. It stood out in my mind. And as the years went by, and I've been in more and more tournaments, it's a really fun day for the whole family. Very competitive, high level athletes coming from all over the place. So, I look forward to the May tournament every year. It's a highlight of my year for sure. And you never know who you're going to be competing against, because you don't know who's going to be there. There's people from all over the world. So that's always a highlight for me. Like in terms of a highlight of a tournament that I think of, obviously when I went to Florida to the martial arts festival with you and David, that's and I competed, and I got some world titles there. That's a highlight for sure for me, because I went and I was breaking concrete, breaking a lot of wood, and competing against some ladies from the States in a really big tournament setting, probably the biggest one I'd ever been to. I haven't yet been to the Florida tournament in the States. I plan on going. It's on my bucket list of things I want to do, but I haven't done that yet. In terms of the summer tournament, but this is the fall tournament, and it was just, there were so many competitors there, doing sparring, doing breaking, doing everything. And it was just a really had festival feel, and it was really cool to be there. And obviously, I like to win. I'm okay when I lose, but I like to win. And I had a lot of success at that tournament, which made me, pretty happy. So that's a highlight for me too. Another highlight for me is when I won the tournament, the black belt, the female black belt tournament, in at one of your May tournaments. That I was really proud of how I broke that day. And I won the belt and against some really strong competitors, and so I was proud of how I did. Another highlight for me is when I broke the baseball bat, because that's something that's I did it in a creative. Me doing creative breaking routines is pretty new. I haven't done a lot of them, and I did this one for my black belt test. I think it was my 3rd degree black belt test. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it was my 4th. I think it was my 3rd though. And I cracked the baseball bat, which was really, really cool. I wasn't sure if I could do that, but I managed to do it and actually break it. And that was a highlight for me too. So breaking is a lot of fun. And I really enjoy doing it, and I feel that I'm in the best club for it, for sure, because you're definitely a master at breaking. So having such good instruction for sure has led to a lot of my success breaking. So it's a big part of our club, and it's a lot of fun to do.
Yeah, so I have names in my head or in tournaments. So and you're referring to 2019 when we had the USBA, WBA, they had called a Black Belt Challenge, where it was like you would sign up for the event and you didn't know what events they were. They literally drew the events the morning of, and then you guys set up, and then you broke whatever it was. Yeah, you end up winning the first ever women's black belt challenge belt for that. And at some point, we gotta get them to do the finish it with the pro series. They haven't done that yet. But then the tournament you're talking about down in Florida a couple years ago was at the International Martial Arts Festival, and that's like a world ranked tournament. And within that, you had for breaking with the Coral World Breaking Championship, and I think you end up winning 3 of the divisions, 3 or 4 of them. But in my brain, the one event that stood out was some of the one of Grandmaster Nick Stanford's girls broke, I forget how many concrete, and then you had your stack up, and you could have broke the stack that you had, or you could have broke a little bit left to guarantee the win, and you asked me what to do. Grandmaster Stanford walked by, and all he said was break it. As he walked by, even though you were competing against one of his students, which I think the one of the good things about breaking is, at least a lot of us top breaking, we just want to see the top, we just want to see the best person win. So if it happens to be one of our people, fine. If it happens to be one of our friends' students win, that's fine too, right? We just want the best people to win. Like, you don't necessarily get that all the time in other competitions when people are competitive, like they're almost enemies, almost per se, of the breaking community, even though we are competing against each other, we're also friends at the same time. And, we just want to see the best break possible, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, and it is like that. People, like, I remember, for sure when I was first starting, you'd get all these pointers from people that you were actually competing against, because you were new and they were trying to help you get the best break you could, and it's very collegial. It's a nice sport. It really is a nice sport.
Yeah, we want to see a big number. Like, at the end of the day, we just want to see the biggest numbers possible. Therefore, we're taking the human body and the athleticism to we're always trying to go to that next level. We want to make sure everybody's safe. So that's why we're also giving people a lot of tips, just to make sure that you're not going to get injured. Because, when you are playing with wood, you're playing with concrete. Sometimes people play with marble, clay tile, baseball bat, mostly baseball bat. The stuff, if you don't hit it right, could potentially injure you. So you gotta make sure that you are conditioned properly. You have your setup properly done. You have the proper holders that are gonna make sure you're staying safe. But yeah, it's really cool. So, well, we got maybe a couple minutes, like 1 or 2 minutes left. Is there anything that you want to say that maybe kind of sums up your journey up to this point moving forward?
Well, I really enjoy teaching, and that's one of the things I really like doing in martial arts. I enjoy, especially children. I'm to the point in my martial arts career that I still like competing, but I still want to compete. But a big component of what I like doing now is teaching, you know, other martial artists, especially younger martial artists, and hopefully, helping them to see the joy in martial arts, because martial arts is a really, and especially Taekwondo for me, is a really interesting, thing to be in. It's a sport, it's an art, it's a disciplined area, and I just, want to help the new generation of martial artists love it as much as I do. So in my martial arts career, I see myself, still competing and still challenging myself in my own personal journey, but also in the journey, doing more and more teaching too, because I really enjoy that, and it gives me a sense of meaning, helping other martial artists realize their potential. So that's where I kind of see myself going. And it's just another aspect of martial arts that I really love doing.
For sure, yeah. As we get to like fourth degree or your master's level, fourth, fifth, sixth degree master, sevens it up to grandmaster. That is definitely part of the journey. Is going from being a student to being a competitor, to being an instructor, to being a master instructor, and really giving back to the style that have helped made you who you are, both in martial art and your personal life. But yeah. So I wanna thank you for joining me for this last hour and sharing your journey with everybody.
Well, thank you for having me.